save you 30% and I'll grow your revenue 20%.
Wow. Say that one more time.
I can save you 30% on your costs, and how you save that or redeploy it is something different. And grow your business 20% in your revenue as I go. It's not just changing your culture, it's changing your organization, it's transforming your organization. And if you're not making the visibility of that as you go through that process, what's the point? But at the end of the day, typically it is a 30% saving and a 20% growth in your revenue.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Numbers with Dave Bookbinder, not to be confused with maybe some of the other Behind the Numbers programs that I've seen out there these days. This is the show where we go beyond the data to explore the people, the stories, and all the insights that really drive business success. I am Dave Bookbinder, and I am known for being a business valuation expert and best-selling author. I thank you for joining me today. We are going to be talking strategy and growth, and I am pleased to welcome today the CEO of the Bletchley Group, Jim Stevenson. Jim, welcome to Behind the Numbers.
Nice to be here. Thanks, Dave.
Pleasure to have you. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and your background, and then we'll jump into the meat of this conversation.
Sure. I'm looking forward to it. A bit about me then. I generally split my time between Los Angeles and London, which is quite a nice lifestyle. I founded Bletchley Group, my company, 25 years ago after Bletchley Park, where the Allies broke the Enigma code. And it started out as a technology company, technology consultancy, but very quickly moved into more strategic and business focused. I am also a partner in a M&A firm called Spark Collective. I'm chairman of a telehealth business called Compass Health, and I'm a chairman of a small startup which is helping dementia patients and chronic pain. A bit about my background, though. I was global head of digital marketing for Bacardi. I launched The Guardian in America. I helped Marks and Spencer's in the UK grow 160 million in revenue after 6 months. Grew a marketplace company in Switzerland by 550 million in valuation, as well as working with a number of smaller companies. And as well as doing this podcast, I also write for a few publications, including Forbes.
So you've done a few things and you've got a lot going on. You sound like a guy who doesn't have a lot of free time.
Yeah, I had an old girlfriend who said I get bored easily and I like to build things. So that seems to be my life.
Clearly, you've done it and you've done it well. So we're going to take advantage of all that great experience and share your insights with the world here today. So let's start by kicking off this way. I think you describe your work as helping organizations transform and grow by aligning strategy, people, processes, and products. Was there ever a pivotal moment in your career when you realized that growth and transformation are sort of hand-in-hand activities and not sequential?
I'm honestly not sure that there was a pivotal moment. I think that the point that was pivotal in my thinking, though, was when I was with The Guardian. And what we did with The Guardian, and The Guardian had an amazing team of which I was a very small part, but I like to think an important part. I'm sure they will disagree with me. But The Guardian, what we did, this was maybe 18 years ago. We transformed The Guardian from a typical news organization into a digital first and then very quickly into a mobile first organization, which fundamentally meant changing the engineering team, bringing in a product team. 2007 in the UK, product managers were not common. So we brought in a bunch of expertise from Silicon Valley. And at the time, we called it the Silicon Valley method, but it was very much a product-focused, customer-first, agile-centric methodology. And at that point, I did recognize that if you're going to grow your business, you need to be set up properly to grow your business. You can't grow your business using legacy thinking. You can't grow your business using legacy organization structures. And I think that was a really pivotal point for me to recognize that actually setting yourself up for success and then driving the success were really the same journey. It was just what part of the journey are you on?
Interesting. And when you're working with boards or leadership teams, what are some of the questions that you're asking of them early stage to really get a handle on where they are in that journey?
To be honest, it's less about asking the senior team. It's more about asking the people on the ground floor. So when I go into any organization, I always spend the first part of that doing discovery. And that involves talking to people at all levels of the organization. Because generally what I've found, and I'm sure you found the same, the board believe the organization is being run one way, the leadership team believe it's being run in a slightly different way, and the people on the ground are just very frustrated by everything that's happening. So you've got to get that mixed level of understanding of what is it the board believes, what is it the leadership team believe they're communicating to the teams, and what are the teams actually experiencing on the ground. And very often, they are all different things.
Yeah. Do people occasionally often tell you something along the lines of, hey, we just really need growth, and the word transformation isn't a part of the equation?
Yeah, I mean, I very, very seldom do transformation projects. They all end up being transformation projects, but they all start as we want to be more digital. We want to grow quicker. We want to do X, Y, and Z. We want to become more agile. We're not innovative enough. The reality is they're all transformation projects. And to be honest, beyond transformation, they're all cultural transformation projects.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's unpack it. So, cultural driven, whether it's data driven, customer centric, how do you measure the culture change in the early phases?
I'm not sure that you can measure culture. I think you can only measure the outcome of culture. So you don't focus on the actual culture itself, because I think it's difficult to measure that. But I think culture itself is your values, your beliefs, and your behaviors. So as long as you're very clear on what your values are and your behaviors match that, then at some point your culture will come with you. I often say to people that you have a culture. It's whether you recognize what your culture is or you don't. And if you don't know what your culture is, chances are it's a bad one. So actually being purposeful, mindful, and intentional on what your culture you want, innovation, agile, people to take more ownership, whatever those things are, you need to decide what that is and then go into a transformation project to actually change what that is. And it becomes somewhat simplistic at some points. I remember I worked with a company in Switzerland, and they were a fantastic company. They weren't growing quickly enough. And the setting themselves up for success, predominantly that was moving people's seats. They'd built this purpose-built office complex, 4 levels. It was stunning. It cost them a lot of money. They had an artist come in to design the colour of yellow in the central wall, and it was a slightly different tone of yellow on the ground to the second, to the first, to the fourth floor. And it was lovely. But the reality was they'd structured the company and the seating plan, of all things, around functions. So if I was a front end engineer and I wanted to talk to a back end engineer and wanted to talk to someone in the UX team and someone in the marketing team to come up with a solution to a problem we had, I had to organize a meeting. And that meeting could be a week on Tuesday or it could be next Monday. Whereas actually just moving them into teams that allowed me to literally turn around in my seat and say, excuse me, you got 2 minutes, I want to ask you about this. Suddenly you exponentially increase the speed of decision making, the speed of problem solving, and that team gelled as part of a cultural hub for the problems that they were solving, for the bits of the business that they were responsible for. Because they were sitting as a team, they were all jointly responsible for it, and they were all jointly working towards that objective.
Yeah, we talk a lot about culture on this program because I often write and speak about the connection between culture, leadership, employee engagement, and business enterprise value, connecting all of those dots. And it's been said a number of times on this show and elsewhere that culture is what you tolerate, the behaviors that you put up with, not so much the behaviors that you espouse on the walls, but what you really put up with. Do you find that in different size organizations, it's harder to implement that kind of culture change across the board? Another thing that somebody said, and then I'll be quiet here for a second, was that all culture is local, meaning, while somebody on the 8th floor may be a champion of your organizational culture, if the guy on 6 didn't get the memo, it's a whole different environment.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I kind of try and support organizations doing, is to break their product, break their company down into smaller chunks and give local teams in your language, or give teams the responsibility for that small chunk. And if it's a product, it may be something along the lines of the homepage on your website. If you're a retailer or eBay or Amazon, that one page will have an entire team structure around about it. And the product description page will have another team structured around about it. It may be other types of ways of splitting your company down into those sections, but you're right. And it's not just the 8th and the 6th floor. If you're a global organization, or even just a smaller organization, if you've got an office in France, it's not just the culture that changes, it's the employment laws, it's how you're allowed to talk to people. So yes, all culture is local. I've yet to find any organisation, if I'm perfectly honest, that says the values on the wall are what they're actually delivering. values in the wall were something that they produced at a workshop offsite 5 years ago, and no one's looked at since. But you're completely right. It is that cultural aspect of it that makes the fundamental change. I remember, just going back to the example of having a team in France, I took over the running of a company which had offices in the UK, France, and Bulgaria, I think. And I sent an email out to the entire group just saying we need to start working more collaboratively and working together better and cross-selling clients that we have and working as a team. And apparently I had broken some kind of French law in doing that. It's like, seriously, how did that happen? All I'm really doing is saying, can we not just kind of work as a group of companies under one banner? And apparently I'd broken some kind of French law, or I'd upset everyone in the French office. So 43 people were very unhappy with me.
Yeah. So when you talk about those culture aspirational things that you have on the wall, emphasis on aspirational, a lot of times you're right. It's something that came out of a workshop and offsite 5 years ago. But one of the things that you said that I hear a lot from people who have done it successfully in implementing culture change, and that is the word intentional. You actually have to really be intentional. Your people have to understand that this is not just a fad situation, and it takes time. And what I've heard is generally 18 to 24 months before it's baked into the DNA of the organization. Does that jibe with what you've seen?
Yeah, I do like the word intentional, and I think it also has to be top down. I think part of it has to be that the leadership team can't say, this is what I want the company to be, but I'm going to be different because I'm the CEO, I'm the boss, I'm the leader. And it has to be from the top down, even the board down, to be honest. And that means that the board, the leadership team have to accept at some point, you're going to have a relatively low member of your team coming and saying, I don't understand why you did that. That doesn't feel to me like it's part of our culture. And usually they have to go, do you know what? You're right. I didn't do that. For me, the timescale is 18 months. I generally plan for 18 months to do both the transformation and to embed it in and to get the new culture and to do it. And typically my experience, at least in the clients I've had, is along that 18-month period, I will save you 30% and I'll grow your revenue 20%.
Wow. Say that one more time. That's really impactful.
Yeah, no, as I go through that 18-month period, because you're changing things from day one to day 18 months, I typically find that I can save you 30% on your costs, and how you save that or redeploy it is something different, and I grow your business 20% in your revenue as I go. So it's not, and I think that holistic view is quite important. It's not just changing your culture, it's changing your organization, it's transforming your organization. And if you're not making the visibility of that as you go through that process, what's the point? But at the end of the day, typically it is a 30% saving and a 20% growth in your revenue.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but I'd be curious how much of the cost savings is a result of turnover improving, because with a better culture, people are more inclined to stay.
Well, there is that. I did work for a client, actually the one in Switzerland again. They were very proud of the fact that they had people who they had not had anyone leave the company for 3 or 4 years. And I view that as a negative. I get the reason that people would want to stay, but if you're not getting new blood into the organization, younger blood, younger thinking, then I don't think people not leaving is a good thing. I think what you want to do is you want to have people growing through the organization, coming in as a junior, going through the management structures, and then finding that they've got nowhere else to come for your company unless they're getting your job. And you want them to move on and do other things. And then you find, you look at things like the PayPal Mafia and things like that. They all grew within that one organization, and then they went away and did fantastic things. And I think every organization needs that. I think every organization needs probably a 4, 5, 6% turnover in your staff to keep that fresh blood coming. But obviously, if you've got a small team of 10 people, that's a big number. If you've got hundreds of thousands, then I think it's a reasonable number that you keep that turnover coming. You want people to stay. You want them to grow with you, but you don't want them to stay beyond the usefulness for them or for you.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point, because if you have too many of the old guard, for example, they don't know what they don't know because it's been an insulated situation. I have seen that in certain organizations I've worked with as well in my career.
The words that I dread to hear, but they're very common, is we've always done it that way.
Yeah. So are you stupid or lazy or both? Right?
Yeah, we've always done it that way. And I get it. It's kind of like, why change if it's working? But yeah, your customers' expectations changing. The marketplace is changing. The systems that you've had changed. You need to go with it. And very often We've always done it that way, is the number one sign of someone needs to be leaving the organization, to not through malice, not through bad intent, just because they've been in one organization too long and they need to see the rest of the world. They need to see the world has changed and what's happening.
Yeah. Jim, in your experience, you've led teams through ups and downs, fundraising, PE exits, all the above. What mindsets or behaviors, in your view, are, I'll call them non-negotiables in these types of high stakes transformations?
Wow, that is a great question. I think for me, the non-negotiable is a curiosity. And it is curiosity. I think if you, and I feel sorry for the younger generation coming out of university, having just spent 4 years getting their computer science degree, because in 12 months' time, it's going to be irrelevant to them. I can teach people the skills that they need. What I cannot teach them is their attitude to work and that curiosity to learn, fundamental instinct of I want to do better, I want to know more, I want to expand my remit, I want to grow my role. I cannot teach that to anyone. I can teach everything else. I cannot teach you that. So as long as you've got that core, you're a reasonably good human being, we can do wonders.
Yeah, you know what? It's fascinating. You're kindred spirit, because I always talk about when I've been hiring junior analysts throughout my career, we can teach you how to do what we do. But to your point, the one thing that I always looked for first and foremost was intellectual curiosity and trying to discern if they're a team player with good attitude. But if they don't have that intellectual curiosity, the desire to learn and grow, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and to be honest, even if it works for the first year, first 2 years, if you're lucky, maybe even the first 3 years, after that you're done for. And you as the employer are done for, because you've got a member of staff that no longer fits the needs that you have and they've not moved and evolved with the company as the company's grown and the culture's changed and everything around about your customers' expectations have changed. But that employee is effectively making themselves unemployable. They need to be growing as the world grows. So I don't always see this from the lens of, as an employer, I want to employ someone. If they're not working, I want to fire them. I view it as, how can I help and support that one person growing through my organization so that in 5 years' time, 6 years' time, they've had 8 different roles in my company. And now they're saying to me, I don't feel I can learn any more from this organization. I've got a new opportunity in this other company. I want to go there. That for me is perfect, because it means that I've grown their curiosity, their skill set. I benefited along that journey, and I absolutely have to benefit along that journey. But it means that I can then take the next person in and mold them and grow them. And suddenly you've got that throughput of 4, 5, 6% moving through the organization, growing with the organization and moving on. Because the best thing in the world is 5, 10 years after someone's worked with you and they've moved on to another organization, is they phone you up and say, man, I love working with you so much. How about collaborating on this, or can we do that, or can we do something else? That for me is the ultimate win.
Yeah, and amen. Once again, kindred spirits, brother. I am fortunate enough that I've mentored some really great young professionals who have gone on to do really great things, and it brings me real pride and joy to see what they're up to. And it's always good catching up with them and collaborating when we can.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about. Sorry, go ahead.
I have the opposite as well. I did go through a big transformation piece for a client, and there was 3 or 4 of the team that just thought I was the most mad person in the world. Everything I was saying was just not going to work. It didn't work for them. The organization was too small for what I wanted. The organization was too big for what I was suggesting, and it just did not work. And eventually 3 or 4 of them left the organization. And I remember going to a conference 2 years later and met one of them. And the guy just came up and gave me a cuddle and went, I kind of get it now. And it's like, that's kind of nice. It took you 2 years, and that's fine. It takes you whatever long it takes you. But it was just that kind of, I kind of get what you were saying now. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, sometimes those aha moments come a little bit later on, as long as it lands eventually.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask you, is there any distinctions between, I'll say, service businesses as opposed to manufacturing businesses when you're trying to implement transformation change?
I don't do an awful lot of manufacturing businesses, to be honest. I'm much more service, retail, digital, product, that kind of stuff. I have worked in a couple of logistics businesses. And from my experience, no, there is very little difference. Obviously, the people on the shop floor You've got to treat them differently. Generally, they're gig workers that are lower paid. So you've got to recognise those differences. Implementing systems within that, you've got to allow them the same amount of time to kind of learn new systems, learn new processes. You want the junior to come up through and be a supervisor, a manager, and coordinator, whatever else those things are. But for the way I look at those businesses, I always start with the customer. And those guys are the product. Those guys are the ones that are getting the product through this process, into the delivery vans, out to the customers, whatever that looks like. But I always start with the customer and that customer experience. I think, was it Peter Drucker? He maybe 40 years ago now, he gave me the concept that all organization charts are vertical. So you've got the marketing team, you've got the sales team, you've got the operations team, you've got the legal team, you've got the finance team, whatever it is. But your customers cut through that vertically. Your customers don't care which team they're talking to. They're talking to your company to get a product that you are selling them to their door. They don't care whether it's a sales guy, the marketing guy, the operations, the warehouse guy, the delivery driver. They're talking to your customer. And you as the company need to think about that and make sure that the silos that you've built into your organization by that organization structure are not blocking the customer experience. And my experience is those vertical silos of marketing, sales, whatever those functions are, it's the gaps between those where customers fall. It's when marketing is handing off a customer to sales, sales is handing off to customer success is handing off to operations. It's those gaps generally when the process fails, because everyone is the master of their own domain. I'm the chief marketing officer. I look at the marketing team, and my marketing team is the best marketing team in the world. But if you're not handing the customer off into the sales funnel for the sales team to pick it up, you're not the best marketing team in the world. You're in a silo. You're not talking to everyone else that you need to talk to, and you need to think holistically to break out of your silo and recognize that it's only as good as the entire experience is for the customer, whether your team's great, got problems. It's the customer experience that you need to drive. Everything else is secondary.
Yeah, interesting. Customer experience is what you have to drive, and everything else is secondary. So when we talk about customer behavior and the digital strategies that will drive that, how do you know when it's time to pivot as opposed to continue to press on the accelerator?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure there are formulas out there. I tend not to use them. I would recommend anyone listening to go away and read the formulas. But for me, it is when you start to miss your KPIs. If your KPIs are being fundamentally missed and you've tried to resolve them, you've tried to fix them, and it is not working, then either it's a time to pivot, and pivot may be pivot your product, pivot may be pivot your team. But at that point, when you're missing something, you need to pivot an aspect of what you're doing. I think it was Einstein said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll always be a failure. If you've got a team that's not managing to hit the KPIs and you think your KPIs are reasonable, you need to change your team. If you've got a team that you're confident can deliver exactly what you want and you're still not meeting your KPIs, maybe you need to change your product. If you've got the right product and the right team and you're not marketing it well, maybe your expectations of who your customer are wrong, and that's very common. You think you're selling your product to these people, and actually it's an entirely different group of people that are buying it. So it's all of those things. But fundamentally, if you're being reasonable and you're missing your KPIs, then that's when you pivot. It's a question of what is it you pivot.
Yeah. I want to tap into another area of your vast expertise here. And for business owners who are thinking about growing by acquisition or being acquired for that matter, due diligence is one of the biggest challenges that they've got to get through. What are some of the red flags that you'd recommend they look for as they're going through either of those processes, the acquisition or the acquiring process or the sale process?
To be honest, the first thing I would say to them is before they even get there is to employ someone like you or I to go through a dummy process so that as you're valuing the company, you can be highlighting some of the challenges that would be caught within a due diligence process. Because if you plan for selling, exiting your business in 2 years' time, that gives you 2 years to set you up for huge success so that when you do get to the sale, it's a tick in the box. Everyone's happy with what you've done. But it also gives you the opportunity to fix the problems that you've got to maximize your exit value. And I think we've spoken about this before, actually. If you value the business based on a simple EBITDA times multiple, which is most common these days, you're missing out on the fact that your EBITDA number is a financial number and you can do a lot to influence that. But buyers don't just buy the EBITDA. They buy the team, they buy the strategy, they buy the opportunity, they buy the growth that they're looking at once they've bought your company. And if you give yourself time as you're setting up your data room, getting ready for your due diligence, getting ready for your exit in 12, 18 months, 2 years, whatever that period is, you can start to influence those things. So you're, one, making the exit process for you easier, you're making due diligence easier, and you're getting a higher valuation because you've gone through all of the blockers. You're giving your new owner an upside once they have bought you, so that they can go away and actually start to see value in buying you, and they'll pay more for all of that. So there's a number of things in there that you would look for through that process. But the simple fact of it is, do it early. You're not going to
Yeah.
sell a business in 3 months' time.
Yeah, and that's what I preach as well. The exit it's a process. It's not just an event. It's not just a transaction. You've got to get there. And the more time that you have in preparing and laying the groundwork and what I'll call de-risking the business will increase your valuation. Because at the end of the day, valuation is about math and risk and reward, and yeah, lower risk, higher reward for investors.
Yeah, and let's be honest, there's always an earn-out period if you're selling your business. So you want to make sure that you're not killing yourself to get to the sale and then not allowing yourself any of the upside during the earn-out period.
Yeah. I was recently on a panel where we talked about the value that people contribute to an enterprise, and there's a lot of compelling data around that. There's a lot of folks besides myself who are speaking about it. We're all climbing the same mountain from different sides. There's empirical data that shows you can actually predict which companies are going to outperform their peers based on what their investment strategy is for people. So when you're working with owners or just making a suggestion for owners who are listening to this program, what can they do to really ensure and remember that the people part of the enterprise doesn't get overlooked when they're thinking about either maximizing their value or just the exit strategy in general?
To be honest, I saw your show yesterday. I've not watched all of it yet, but that included succession planning. And I think succession planning is a hugely important part of all of this. You don't just want to have succession planning for the leadership, the owners of the business, as they're moving through and moving up and moving out. What you want to make sure is that your entire team is part of that process. It's an understanding, so that once you do have your right culture, that you're actually, as part of succession planning, making sure that culture is maintained, culture is shown. And if you have a culture whereby you value people, you give people autonomy to do work, you set them up for success, you're growing them, then one, they will be happier and they will perform better for you and your company will be more successful. But it's then making sure that you're going through that process, that actually you're matching the new owners that you're selling to with the existing culture you have. And it takes a lot to say, I'm not selling my business to you because your culture is wrong for my culture. But it's also the number one thing post-merger, post-acquisition, that will kill your company. I've worked with several companies, easily three, four, who have been bought, and 2 years later, the founders come back and said, I don't know I'm going to get my earnout because these guys are idiots. The culture's wrong. They're not managing it well. My earnout's at risk. Can I buy my company back? Can I influence them in some way? I need to do something to make this work. And it is incredibly common that happens, and yet still people aren't planning for it ahead of time.
Yeah, and that's what they should be thinking about. And depending on where you get your data, more than 75% of transactions fail to deliver on the proposed synergies, and the number one reason for that failure is lack of culture fit. Jim, we are down to the final minutes here in the program, and before we bounce, I wanted to give you a chance to tell the folks out there in the audience who are listening, what's the key thing you want them to remember from today's conversation, and maybe one shift that they can make and take back to act on this week?
I think for me that the one thing would be where we started, and that would be intentional culture. You have a culture. It's whether you're intentional about it. It's whether it's the one that you want. It's whether it's the one that's working best for you. So remember that your culture is the fundamental thing that is actually gluing your people. It's what keeps your people together. It's what drives your company forward. It's the core of everything that you want. You can't do anything. You can't grow your business. You can't transform your business. You can't scale your business. Exiting your business will be a challenge. Acquiring new businesses will be a challenge if you don't understand what your culture is and how that impacts on everything else around about you.
That is a tweetable moment. Jim, tell the audience how they can find you, where they can learn more about you, if they want to work with you, connect with you.
Sure. I have a couple of websites. So jimstevenson.co, Bletchley Group, Bletchley group.com after Bletchley Park, or just on LinkedIn, to be honest. You'll find me under Jim Stevenson.
That's awesome. Jim, thank you so much for spending time today with us and sharing all these great insights.
No, thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And pleasure was mine. And thank you out there in the audience for tuning into Behind the Numbers with Dave Bookbinder. We really appreciate everything that you do to help this show continue to grow. It just continues to boggle my mind. But we are listened to in more than 100 countries, and it's more than 300 episodes now. So thank you for your support. Special shout out to Victoria from New Jersey for kind words in a provisors group. You know who I'm talking to. Thanks, Tori. Appreciate you. Until next time, I am Dave Bookbinder reminding you that the numbers tell the story, but it's the people that bring it to life. Take care, everybody.